Our scripture for this evening will come from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 6, verse 10, also chapter 17 and verse 23, and chapter 25 and verse 4. There are some ways in which we have been disciplined, ways in which we have been conditioned and taught to respect things, respect life, respect our elders, respect principles, to know right from wrong. And some of that comes from various forms of teaching and discipline. And some of that comes from some of the old sayings that we used to hear quite often. Sayings like, a hard head makes a soft behind. Sayings like, you don't believe fat meat is greasy. Or sayings like, you're so busy talking, you're not listening. As we consider these sayings, we hated to hear them when we heard them, but we grow up to appreciate the wisdom behind such sayings. They seem to have gone by the wayside, but are just as relevant today as they were when we heard them years ago. So often God's people fail to experience more and are often dealing with the problems of a fallen creation because we don't hear what God is trying to tell us. In wake of this pandemic, the fact that it is a prolonged problem, the fact that we have surges and resurges and variants and mutations, many people understandably are talking about the anxiousness, the frustration, and the things that are associated with being in a pandemic. And being on a call with some ministers today, I've come to understand that some are shutting churches back down or going through some other measures to help keep this problem from becoming a greater problem. One of the things that we need to ask ourselves is God trying to tell us something? Think about these scriptures as we read in the book of Jeremiah and God's rejection of Judah because they did not take time to listen. In Jeremiah chapter 6 and verse 10, to whom shall I speak and give warning that they may hear? Behold, the ear is uncircumcised. That means closed in this context, and they cannot hear. Behold, the word of the Lord is unto them a reproach. They have no delight in it. In Jeremiah 17 and verse number 23. But they obeyed not, neither inclined their ear, but made their neck stiff, that they might not hear nor receive instruction. In Jeremiah chapter 25 and verse number 4. And the Lord had sent unto you all his servants the prophets, rising up early and sending them, but you have not hearkened nor inclined your ear to hear. So often God is trying to communicate warnings, admonishments to his people, and we refuse to hear. The inability to hear happens for a few reasons. Sometimes because of peripheral noise or noise around us. Sometimes because we're not paying attention. At other times it can be because we're speaking instead of active listening. It could be because our attention is divided, or we just outright have closed our ears. In the context of these passages, God's people simply refused to hear what God was trying to say to them. Allow me to admit that I do not have all of the answers as to what God may be saying to us through what he has permitted in these times in which we live. But I would like to encourage us to do some things that would allow us to be on the favor end and not on the rejection end of God's response to our listening or lack thereof. We don't want to be like Judah and are rejected by God or lose any favor from God simply because we've closed our ears. More important, we've closed our hearts. I'd like to encourage you to do two things. Take some quiet time. Allow yourself to be separated from the distractions of life and take some quiet time and just allow yourself to focus on God and ask God to speak to your heart. Second, I'd like to encourage you to take some inventory of your life. This time, this pandemic should cause us to see what's really important and what we perhaps have out of perspective. Take inventory of your life and your outcomes. And as you take that quiet time and asking God to help speak to you, you will see that He speaks to us through His Word. So you may need to do some Bible reading that is relevant to where you are. When I say relevant to where you are, if you need to work on love, for example, you need to find every scripture that deals with love. If you need to work on humility, if you need to work on forgiveness, read those scriptures that are relevant to what you're going through or where you are, and they will help you in that quiet time to take inventory of your life, and God will help you to see and understand things that you didn't see and understand before. And I'd like to also encourage you to focus on the big picture. So often we miss what God is trying to say to us because we're so wrapped up in the everyday things of life, the stuff that is right before us, that we miss the big picture. I don't know what the big picture is in your life or what the big picture is for society as a whole, but I do believe it would be wise of us to learn the lesson of Judah and to recognize that they missed so many blessings because they closed their ears. Again, they closed their hearts. Take some time and ask God to speak to you, to reveal to you, to show you what He wants you to know so that we don't repeat the failures of others and miss the blessings of God. Use this as time to focus on the big picture, and just maybe we can get through this lesson with a little less pain and fewer problems. Otherwise, we may be doomed to repeat the course. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.